My name is Petya Rasheva, an alumna at the Stanford LEAD program. I am talking today to Xinjin Zhao, a global senior executive of ExxonMobil, recently retired, who has also authored a leadership book, The Odyssey of Self-Discovery, and is publishing a blog with 300,000 subscribers. Welcome, Xinjin.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Xinjin, would you please tell us briefly about your career path?
I grown up in China, spent roughly about half my life in the US, half in China. Obviously, most of my career, professional career, was in the US, in the corporate world for about 30 years, with various leadership positions, managing global business. One of the very fortunate thing I had during my career was I was able to work with customers, partners around the world, travel around the world, so experience a very different culture around the world. That's a unique privilege I had throughout my career.
Xinjin, and in your opinion, what is critical in one's path to power?
First of all, let me try to see. I'm a little bit hesitant to use the word power. Of course, power can mean different things for different people. Power for influence, power of persuasion, all that's fine. But some might associate the word power with authority, I'm not sure, to be honest. I haven't achieved much power in my career. Maybe let me talk a little bit from the perspective of career success. Maybe that's the perspective I'll share a little bit of my thought. I think it was from a book of Professor Richard Shell. The name of the book is something along the line of Success Your Way. He described success in this way. He said success for most people is two dimension. One dimension is your internal. It means your internal satisfaction. You feel good about yourself. You enjoying what you're doing. It's about personal happiness. The other dimension is more external. Success is about the desire for achievement, the desire for social recognition, it's about respect. So that's the two dimension of course, different people will be motivated by different things, and some people probably think about success more from the internal perspective. Other will be more the external perspective. I reflect myself. I would say probably true for a lot of people. Early in our career, we tend to focus on the external dimension of success. Promotions, achievement. Those are the things I think we tend to be focused on. In terms of my career, I would see success. One of the big factor in the early part of the career. Obviously, I had a lot of setback and challenges, just like anybody else. But stay positive, stay flexible, and being adaptive. That's always important. Always have the willingness to learn, because you can never control what the outside world will throw at you, the situation, the environment will throw at you. You can have all the plan of what you want to do, what you want to achieve, but things most of the time are not in your control. You have to have that flexibility, have that mindset, willing to change, willing to adapt. That's probably I would see the biggest factor in terms of whatever success I had over my career. The different way of think about it is everybody will have setbacks in career. It's you are always going to have failures, if you want to call it failure. That's just a part of life. It's through those failures that we learn, that we grow. One thing I don't remember who said it, but it's something along the line of without failures you will never know what the true limit of your potential is. I think it's a very insightful, very powerful way of thinking about failures or success in your life. As I progress in my career, as I get older, maybe it's if you think about the other dimension of a success, I think it's one of the truly important moment. Is to realize to have the self-awareness that's what's truly important in your career or in your life. It's for me, it was at some point you realize, hey, success, it's not really about my achievement. If it's the impact I have on the business, it's the impact on business decision, it's the impact on other people's career. I think that's a pivotal moment in terms of how I think about success or think about my career. The self-discovery really helped me to define my priority or my relationship with my colleagues or others. Give me the confidence want to say no, or that's I think it's really how I think about the other dimension of success. In my book, we'll talk about a little bit later. It's about that's why I call the book "The Odyssey of Self-Discovery on the Journey of Becoming a Leader." Right? It's really critical to develop the self-awareness through some intentional effort. It doesn't. I think it was a Harvard Business Review article said 85% of people do not have a good self-awareness. You have to intentionally to make the effort to really know who you are and what's important for you. Unless you to go through those effort, you are going to end up making a lot of a career decision. Depends on the situation at the moment, rather than depends on a certain principle you have about your career, about leadership. So have that once you have that clarity of what's important to you, then you'll be able to take the intentional step to move towards, hey, this is important. So you work towards that goal. So I think, I kind of described gone through that two phase of my life in terms of how I view success in my career. I'm not sure that answers your question, but that's kind of in a nutshell how I see it.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. And Xinjin, in these lines, once you achieve a position of seniority, what changes?
Something changed in terms of the work. Obviously, change. As you get into a different position, your view of things also change. The need for you to lead your leadership also change. But on the other hand, in terms of how you behave as a leader, I don't think it fundamentally changed that as much. Maybe I'll mention a few things. The first, again, go back to the self-awareness. It's as you move through your career or into different positions, you always need to have the clarity of your value. What's your strengths? What's your weaknesses? Have the clarity of not just what you're doing, how you're doing, but why you're doing what you're doing. I think that clarity will help you to whatever the position is, to put the context of your work with the bigger picture. What you're doing, what does that mean for you? What's that mean for the stakeholder? What does that mean for the society? I think the more you have that clarity of why you're doing what you're doing, I think the more you're going to be motivated to do the thing well and to continue to do what you do. That's probably the first point. The second point I'll mention is, again, go back to something along the line I said before, but it's a very dynamic world nowadays. You often hear people say, "Hey, what got you here is not going to get you there." I think it's a powerful statement, especially in this currently global dynamic environment. For example, if you have experience, most of the time is considered a good thing, as yourself, you worked in many different countries, you realize sometimes the experience can be a bad thing, because hold you to certain biased position when you work in a different culture, different environment. So it's you have to always to have an open mind, to be willing to listen, willing to hear the other side of perspective, even if you don't agree. The more you can hear what the perspective of the other party, the more likely you can have one solution, come up a position that actually satisfy both sides. So that have the open mind and the willingness to learn. It's to me, it's a very critical thing. The third thing I'll mention is, it's either in your life or in career. One of the things you have to be willing to take risk. This is especially for career as you progress in your career. If you only follow the path of being certain what you want to do, follow the same path, you are probably going to have a challenge to try different things, explore to different perspective. So you have to be willing to take on new challenges, to try completely new things. Every time I took some, I consider at the time a risky move, end up always work out pretty well, either because I was able to look at a thing from a very fresh perspective, make things happen, or I learned something I had no idea before. Either way, I think it's worked out very well. So be willing to take risk. I think it's something will help all of us throughout the career. So those are few aspects I can share a little bit from my perspective.
Thank you, Xinjin. And now I want to ask you about the book, The Odyssey of Self-Discovery. It was published in the US, it's been translated and published in China as well. Would you tell us a little bit about it? What is it about?
Yeah, thank you. The book was my first retirement project. I started writing right after I retired. Took me about 8 months to write it, published in the US. One of the fascinating things about writing a book is to be able to interact with people from all different walks of life, hear the very different perspective of what leadership means to them. So that was a wonderful experience. It's obviously there are a lot of different concepts, different messages in the book. But if I have to pick one from the book, I would see is the importance of align and connecting your individual leadership value with the organization objective and purpose. That message goes through the book, throughout the book. That was the underlying message I tried to emphasize. When employee come to any organization, either a business or nonprofit or whatever, they come as a human first, with their own purpose, with their own value. Everybody is unique, everybody is different, and everybody has a different priority. Of course, each organization has its own value and culture. When the individual value and the organization objective are aligned, you're going to have an authentic workforce. People are going to be motivated, are going to be inspired. Of course, if it doesn't get aligned, then you are going to have trouble with the individual, with the organization. As one of the fascinating things came out from the Book Echo project is I did a survey as a part of the book. I asked two questions. The first question was, have you ever asked yourself, why do you want to be a leader? The second question was, have anyone in your organization ever asked you why you want to be a leader? Pretty straightforward question, but the survey result was very revealing or shocking to me when I said this. By the way, the survey was taken by about 700 people around the world, so it was a reasonably sizable a number of people actually who took the survey, about half from the US, half from outside the US. The answer for that two question was about 82% of people said, yes, I have asked myself, why do I want to be a leader? And the answer to the second question is only about 39% of people ever were asked by anybody in their organization why they want to be a leader. So that's about 40%, 43% gap. That means at least 40% or almost half of the people were never asked by their organization or their manager why they want to be a leader. As a result of that gap, I think two things happens. One is very often managers or leaders would assume other people are motivated by the same thing as you are. Because if you don't ask, you don't know, you're going to make some assumptions. That's a very typical assumption people would make. That's a very dangerous assumption because everybody is motivated by different things, especially in the context of nowadays the DEI, diversity, inclusion. People have a very different motivations for different reasons. If you can understand it, you can connect with the person. If you don't understand it, it's very difficult to connect with your employee at a deep level. The second thing, what will happen is because if you think about 40-some% of people, nobody ever asked them why, what motivated them to be a leader. End up a lot of the leadership development program in corporate, in different organizations are going to be mostly driven by what the organization needs, what the organization objective is, rather than something really install the courage, the conviction for the people to be the leaders. Because they don't really, either because of constraint on resource or whatever reason, they don't spend enough time and effort to understand what's truly motivate people. End up a lot of the leadership development focus on skills rather than courage, inspiration, conviction. Those value really driving people. So the bottom line, I guess, to go to the bottom line of the book is really as an individual, you have to take the individual intentional effort to develop your own self-awareness through self-discovery. Figure out what's truly important for you, because nobody else can tell you what's important for you. You are in the best position to figure that one out. And along with that, you have to take ownership of your own leadership development. Don't wait for the organization or other people will develop your leadership. You have to take your ownership for that to happen. So that's probably the most critical message for the book.
Highly recommended. Thank you very much, Xinjin, for this very interesting conversation on my behalf and on behalf of my classmates at the Stanford Lead.
Thank you so much for having me. I greatly enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.